Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Let's see if we can get to diamonds. Is this reason enough to go Gruul? I guess we could still go Simic Splash Red, so we avoid Gruul. What's the alternative? Get the points, Consecrate Consume. Ravager Worm is just such a powerful card. I think we'll try and go Simic Splash Red instead of Gruul. I remember we had a deck with Biogenic Ooze and Ravager Worm and we still did poorly. Yeah, I think we just want to avoid going Gruul. But I think I will take the Ravager Worm still, and then maybe splash it in some sort of Gates deck or Simic deck. What about a black-red deck? The problem is Ravager Worm is double green, so it's not really splashable in a Rakdos deck. There is an Arrester's Admonition, so we could go maybe Simic Splashing Red, and Admonition would fit in nicely. There's no great single red card. The two good red cards are both Rakdos, so I think we take Admonition. Terramander's a good follow-up. Stay on Simic, seems okay. And then we can hope to wheel maybe a Wayfinder, maybe a Volley, maybe Thought Collapse or Slinger. Open the Gates for mana fixing seems like a welcome addition. Don't really want to take a Recluse since we're planning to go Simic Splash Red. And I don't really want to splash for a Recluse. There's no other good Simic card here. Courier's okay, but it's much better if we can be white as well. Crusher could be worth splashing alongside a Ravager Worm. We're going to have some adapt creatures, some riot creatures. Alternatively, there's just Skitter Eel as kind of the safer pick that's going to end up in our deck no matter what. But Crusher can be quite good if we have enough synergy with it. So I think it's worth a splash in a Simic deck. Skitter Eel would be the safer pick in a sense. But I think Crusher has enough upside that we should try it. Alright, so now I'll take the Skitter Eel. Drake is okay, but it's not going to shine in our deck. Whereas Eel has a lot of synergy going on. Creeper would also be a fine pick. But I think we prefer Eel for now, given the synergy with the Crusher as well. And now we could take Gateway Plaza to help us fix our mana. Gruul Locket would help with our mana situation. X-Bane Beast is okay, kind of just a filler 4-drop, nothing special. Definitely worse than Skitter Eel. I think we like Plaza. Make sure we can cast all our spells. And Locket that's not Simic is more difficult for us to sacrifice, so we're less interested in it. I do like Essence Capture quite a bit. We're going to be Simic. And the +1 counter has some synergies as well with the Crusher. Renthorn is fine, but replaceable. Same with the Spider. Essence Capture has a more uniquely powerful effect, I think. And 9th pick, we did wheel Wilderness Reclamation. Could be okay if we end up with a ton of adapt creatures. We do have some cards we can play at instant speed as well, so it could be playable in our deck. I'm usually not too high on the card since it requires a lot of adapt to be worth it. The alternative would be Quench, which is not spectacular in our deck. Could be playable. I think we'll try Reclamation, and if we don't get there on the adapt creatures, then we don't have to play it. Pretty happy with the Volley, can always main deck it if we think our deck is weak to flyers. A lot of flyers being played, so seems fine. And do we want a second Volley? Probably not playing two of them. Could see playing a Slinger if we're short on 3-drops. Nothing here. Not gonna splash any of these. We'll take an uncommon for the vaults. I doubt we want an Act of Treason here. Alright. So we've got a reasonable start to a Simic deck splashing red for Crusher and Worm, so we'd like to pick up some more gates for fixing, and then make sure we have enough adapt creatures. Sorrowform hybrids as 2-drops would be excellent. What about a Gatebreaker Ram? Don't mind if I do. Hope to wheel Simic Guild Gate, and then we can highly prioritize any gates we find. And if we don't wheel Simic Guild Gates, maybe we wheel like a Titanic Brawl, Wrecking Beast, or Applied Biomancy. Alright, this could be the deck for Frilled Mystic. Since we are going to be base Simic, splashing red, so we could afford to play the Mystic. Duelist would also be quite good in this type of Simic deck. Creeper would be quite good as well. But Mystic it is. What about another one? Skatewing Spy is also quite strong in our deck, where we have a bunch of +1 counter synergies. But the Wilderness Reclamation plus double Mystic could be pretty spicy, so I don't hate it. Don't think we want to take an off-color Guildgate right now. Titanic Brawl could be okay removal if we can end up with some beefier creatures to fight with. Do need to kind of shore up our early game a little bit more. We're not gonna go crazy with Archway Angel here. We want to cast Frilled Mystic, so we want a solid blue-green mana base. Can just take a Mammoth Spider here as a way to hold off any flyers. Don't think this is a Swirling Torrent deck, we're not a tempo deck. Alright, got some good options here. Probably just gonna take the Gruul Guildgate as a gate for the Ram and as mana fixing for Worm and Crusher. Thought Collapse would also be quite good in our Reclamation. Frilled Mystic deck. Boar would be a decent 2-drop. Growth Spiral would be a good card as well. Help us ramp and being an instant. But I don't think we can pass up on Gruul Guildgates. Now we can take the Territorial Boar as a reasonable 2-drop for our deck. Nothing else really. Yeah, the Surform hybrids are being shy today. 8th pick. Thought Collapse, Slimebind, Beast. Slimebind doesn't shine in the Simic decks, because if you need to attack on the ground, opponent still gets a blocker out of it. That being said, we are lacking early interaction, and this does still prevent something from beating down. And we've got a pretty strong late game with these two Mystics, the Worm, the Crusher. The alternative would be Thought Collapse, which also plays pretty well. But I'm kind of worried that our early game, if we're going to be facing a more aggressive deck, we're going to be hard-pressed to catch back up. So that could be a reason to still take the Slimebind, but it is much better in Azorius than in Simic. I think I'll take a Thought Collapse. I guess we'll take another Titanic Brawl, although we do need to pick up some creatures to fight with. Prying Eyes could also be good with our Reclamation as more instants to play alongside a Mystic. Could also use a Wrecking Beast as a Curve Topper, but can probably find some other random Curve Topper to replace it with. So I'll take a Brawl. Steeple Creeper's perfect. And another Open the Gates for mana fixing is great. And we got a Prying Eyes anyway, if we want it. Alright, Simic Splash Gruul, or Splash Red. Let's see what we can do in the last pack. Some pretty good cards, not too many great ones for our deck. Applied Biomancy is okay. Duelist is okay. There's another Brawl, but again, we're kind of lacking creatures at the moment. Looking at our curve, could always use an Axebane Beast as a curve filler, but it's probably going to wheel. So it's probably between Biomancy and Duelist right now. Biomancy is a pretty good trick, but it is better in a more tempo-oriented deck that tries to be more aggressive than our deck, which is pretty controlling. That being said, same goes for Duelists. It's a lot better in a more aggressive Simic deck where you're forcing the opponent into awkward blocks and you get to blow out with Duelist. So none of these cards really shine in our deck. I think I'm leaning Duelists. Although Biomancy can be nice with our counter spells if we can bounce something and then counter it on the way back. I guess we'll try it. Ooh. Biomancer's Familiar is savage. Great in the deck we're trying to draft. This pack is pretty good. Another Crusher would be pretty strong. Scary Eel, of course, great combo with Familiar. And with our Crusher, Simic Guildgate would be great. Another Boar I'll take. But can't pass up on Familiar. So pretty much taking any adapt creature we find right now. Here we might have to take the Gruul Guildgate. Make sure we have enough mana fixing and enough gates to support the Ram. And with 2 Gruul Guildgates and a Gateway Plaza, we don't need many mountains to make that work. We also have the 2 Open the Gates to help out. So casting the Frilled Mystic is going to be a lot easier. Would love to wield the Growth Spiral or the Renthorn. Alright, I mean, we're splashing red, and Savage Smash is a pretty good splash card still. Alternative would be another Thought Collapse, but I think Smash is worth splashing here. Alright, so I'll take another gate here over to open the gates, and then we should be set on gates and our red mana fixing. 4 red sources essentially for Savage Smash, Crusher and Worm should be plenty alongside to open the gates. Didn't see any Sorrowform hybrids in this draft, which is kind of the backbone of a lot of the green decks. Don't have a ton of adapt stuff. So if we take a look at our creature curve right now, it looks something like this. Although Mystic we won't often cast on turn 4. So we could use some more 2s and 3s, but there's none of those in this pack. The problem with Incubation Incongruity is that we don't have a super high creature count, and this cannot find lands, unlike Adventurous Impulse. So if we miss with Incubation, it's a disaster, and Incongruity, as far as removal, is pretty bad. Like, it's an emergency answer to maybe a flyer, but it's not a great answer. So the pick might actually just be the Thought Collapse anyway. Don't know if we'll play double Thought Collapse, but at least it fits our deck a lot better. With our Wilderness Reclamation, double Frilled Mystic, counterspell deck. And we already have 2 Titanic Brawls, and we're lacking creatures, so I don't think we want to take a third one. I'll just take a Thought Collapse. Ooh, wow. What a pack. So I would take Simi-Guildgate over Open the Gates. There's also Growth Spiral and Essence Capture. We already have an Essence Capture, although Simi-Guildgate for fixing is pretty nice when we're trying to cast double Frilled Mystic. So the pick might just be Guildgate plus an extra gate for the Ram. And an 8th pick, I think we have to take the boar here. Already have a Mammoth Spider. Need more early game. I guess Locket could be reasonable too. As another play we can make early, help us fix our mana. Plays pretty well with Reclamation, just being able to sack it at instant speed. But we're lacking early plays. I think we just want board to trade off. Alright, both Brush Strider and Axebane Beast are kind of filler creatures that we can play. The Beast fits a bit better with double Titanic Brawl. We can take out those pesky 3-powered flyers pretty easily, whereas Brush Strider doesn't block all that well. So I'm kind of leaning Axebane Beast over Brush Strider, even though Brush Strider fits our curve maybe a bit better. Yeah, I think we just need better blockers, and Axebane Beast is a better blocker than Brush Strider. Another boar's nice. And Growth Spiral Wield, I think that's a pick over the 3rd Brawl. Rounds out our deck nicely. Take a random Junk Troller. Is there any chance we play Coral Commando? Something went horribly wrong if we have to play that one. So I'll just take the uncommon for the vaults. Alright. Ooh, wow. It's a late Growth Spiral. So we ended up with a lot of playables. Deck's not perfect, we're lacking Sorrowform hybrids. If these territorial boars were all Sorrowform hybrids, our deck would be insane. Did not end up with a lot of adapt creatures, so the Biomancer's Familiar is actually quite weak. It does still help out with Steeple Creeper, making it cheaper, and we have a Skitter Eel and a Terramander that adapts. So didn't quite get there on the Familiar, sadly, but our opponent might overvalue it and kill it. And if we do manage to land Skitter Eel or Terramander alongside Familiar, we can do some damage. Alright, so we don't want any mountains in this deck since we have double Mystic. We're definitely playing the Reclamation since we have a ton of instants to play. Then the question is, how many lands do we play? With double Growth Spiral, playing extra lands is pretty nice, but with double Open the Gates, you don't want too many lands. Question is, do we even need to open the gates? We have 3 Gruul Guild gates, Gateway Plaza for red mana, so that should be plenty for Smash, Crusher, and Worm. And then we also have an extra Simi-Guild gate for an extra gate for the Ram. So I could even see a world where we don't play both Open the Gates, don't have to play both Growth Spirals, don't have to play all 3 boars. Robobolt Slinger or Rubble Slinger is cuttable. Volley could be cuttable, although our deck is somewhat weak to flyers. We've got a Mammoth Spider, Terramander, and I guess Steeple Creeper that interact with flying. but that's about it. So the volley could be main decked. How much removal do we have? We've got double brawl, biomancy as a bounce spell, smash, and then mostly counter spells to deal with creatures, Assets Capture, double Thought Collapse, double Mystic. And then the Crusher and the Worm can also double up as removal. So maybe the volley is not necessary. And we can cut it after all. So 4 more cuts. This is a deck, since I think we do want to play Prying Eyes, since we're kind of lacking late game card draw otherwise. And a deck with Prying Eyes would rather just hit its land drops and then discard additional lands to the Prying Eyes. We also have Growth Spiral, which if we play it, wants us to have at least 17 lands instead of trying to trim lands for opening gates, since being able to put a land in play with Growth Spiral is pretty key. So these opening gates are looking a little awkward, even though they can help us fix our mana and put more gates in play for Ram. But we have a lot of turn 2 plays, so we don't want to spend our early turns casting opening gates. So I'm thinking we might even cut them completely and just play 17 lands for red sources. Yeah, Axebane Beast doesn't look amazing, but I'm kind of worried that we don't have enough bodies to fight with Titanic Brawl if we cut the Axebane Beast. So I think we just cut the opening gates, and then we need to make 2 more cuts. So we don't have a ton of creatures, so closing out the game's not necessarily going to be straightforward, but we do have some pretty high impact creatures. Crusher can win the game by itself if it's paired with Eel or Terramander. Familiar plus Terramander or Eel can win the game by itself. We can sort of tempo the opponent out in a way if we get them with a Frilled Mystic. We've got a Creeper that can fly over. Ram can be winning the game by itself. So I don't think we want to cut any additional creatures since we're so creature light. The boars aren't great, but just being 2 mana 2/2s I think is good enough, since we have all these Thought Collapses and Frilled Mystics, so we can kind of counter the top end from the opponent. But if our opponent gets off to a quick start, then we don't have many ways to catch back up, so just having a board to trade off for the opponent's 2 drops is good enough. So what do we cut? Maybe double Growth Spiral is not necessary. Titanic Brawl looks pretty bad. I could see cutting a Titanic Brawl and just keeping the 1 to deal with maybe some flyer. Yeah, we'll cut a Brawl and then maybe just cut a Spiral since it's kind of low impact anyway. And then play this. No opening gates, just 17 lands plus a Growth Spiral should be okay. And then we have 5 counter spells, Assets Capture, double Thought Collapse, double Frilled Mystic. Only to adapt creatures sadly, would have loved to pick up more. But I think this Reclamation is going to be worth it with all these instants that we have. Almost all our interaction is instant speed. So I think Reclamation is going to be worth it. Makes Frilled Mystic a lot better. Alright, I think we give this a shot. And then our mana distribution. Definitely need a lot of blue for double blue. How many blue sources do we have? 7, 8, 9. Probably want at least 1 more. So what if we cut a forest for an island? How many green do we have? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Should be okay. And then we have 10 blue if we count the Gateway Plaza. Alright, I think this is okay. Temur Flash it is. On the play I think we can keep, don't have a lot of early action, but I've got an Admonition to kind of catch us back up, and then a Mystic on 4. Oligarch's annoying. I think we just bounce it. Alright, flooding out a bit here. And replace Oligarch. Hopefully we can get some value from this Frilled Mystic, otherwise we're gonna play Spider next turn anyway. Opponent does nothing, respecting Frilled Mystic. And we're just gonna have to play Spider here, sadly. Can't keep taking 2 forever. Grotesque Demise would be unfortunate. But next turn we can play the boar and then have Mystic up. Looks like a Grotesque Demise is happening, maybe Final Payment. Alright, Final Payment's not as bad. Carrion Imp. Alright, it's not going to be easy to get rid of that. We're definitely behind. Opponent knows about the Frilled Mystic. They're not going to play into it unless they absolutely have to. And we're behind on board, so we don't have the luxury of keeping up 4 mana forever. It's good enough for me. Alright, well, definitely drawing pretty poorly here. Let's get in for 3. A Ravager Worm off the top would be pretty sweet. We could fight a 1/1 Spirit Token here. Don't think that's how we win this game. Opponent keeps the Spirit back, fearing Fairy Duelists, which makes sense. Skiriel's not bad. Let's get in there. And I want to play the untapped land so we can adapt and then still Titanic Brawl for 1 mana. And Grudian, sure. That can block our Skiriel, but we can still Titanic Brawl the Carrion Imp here. Opponent is still respecting Fairy Duelists, so they're still not attacking with the Spirit Token. But I think we do pull the trigger on this Carrion Imp. Adapts, and then Titanic Brawl. And hope they don't have another final payment. That worked. So we don't want to play the Guildgate since our opponent still respects Fairy Duelists. And since they've been respecting Fairy Duelists, they might not block with the Grudian. Either way, our only option is really attacking here. Alright, they're gonna pull the trigger anyway on the block. Reason not to attack with the eel is if we picked up our Crusher, because then we could remove counters to shoot stuff. Unbreakable Formation. It's too bad. So if we did have Fairy Duelists, then the Skiriel would have survived. Sadly, we did not. Opponent with a bunch of Death Touch creatures. At least we reduced their clock down to a 1/1 flyer. Want to keep lands in hand in case we find Prying Eyes. So all things considered, we could have been in a worse position. Life totals are kind of even, but if our opponent has any relevant spells, we could be in trouble. Savage Smash. I don't know if we want to Savage Smash quite yet here on a 1/1. I think we wait. Opponent also has a lot of mana tapped, so they could have all sorts of instant speed tricks. And if they play Grasping Thrall, we'll regret Savage Smashing the token. Well, now we got punished for waiting. It's still only 1 damage a turn, so eventually we'll find an answer, hopefully. Attacks with everyone. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll block. Can't really keep taking damage here, and we've got some large creatures that wouldn't mind getting rid of the Death Touchers. Could imply they have a Dead Revels. Not much we can do there. Opponent could get back some quality creatures anyway. Grotesque Demise Mystic. It's a weird play. Fair enough. Thought Collapse, so we're taking 3 turn now. Still gonna keep lands in hand for Prying Eyes. We need something to stabilize us soon here. More lands. We've got 5 lands left in 18. Gotta pretty much counter anything they play. Opponent was splashing Rakdos apparently. And there's a worm, that's what we needed. Fight a Spirit Token, trade for Grudian. Doesn't really matter what we do here. Or that to a removal spell, that to a drain effect. That to another creature and drawing another land. Yep. Creepers looking pretty terrible in the face of Oligarch. But yeah, would have preferred to trade Creeper for Grudian and then have the worm in the face of Oligarch. Now we're going to be facing a 1/1 flyer. How about Island? Alright, let's go digging. Alright, let's ditch some lands, and then we can play Gatebreaker Ram and Applied Biomancy, or we can Applied Biomancy, bouncing the token, and then keep up Essence Capture. I kind of like getting the Ram in play, but they probably have a removal spell lined up. Problem there is if they kill the Ram, play creature, then we don't have Essence Capture up. So yeah, I think we're just going to Biomancy, bounce the token, and then keep up Essence Capture, hope they play Flyer that turn, or just don't do anything. Playing the Ram, of course, would speed up our clock. And this Ram is pretty big, it's a 6/6, so it would be a 2-turn clock. There's a red mana. So opponent's probably holding a bunch of splashed red cards that they weren't able to play so far. Hopefully they're creatures and not burn spells. Do we have any gates left in our deck? I don't think we do, so there's no reason to show them the Semi-Guild Gate, I think. So I think I just hold the Guild Gate for now. 6 toughness versus 7 shouldn't make a difference. I want to hold the gate in case that changes the opponent's play based on the Ram only being a 6/6 instead of a 7/7. And since we don't have any additional gates in our deck, I'm pretty sure, might as well keep it a surprise. Opponent with a final payment, killing the Ram. We'll keep the land in hand as well, since our opponent could have a Basilica Bellhaunt. Although we would probably counter that, given that we're at 1. Right on time. Well, now we're just hoping to draw something that does something. Opponent is at 6. Expose a Reclamation, be my guest. Don't think we'll be needing that. Opponent just wants a scry. And Thought Collapse is going to make it so our opponent should mill before we do. Terramander, it's a good one. Our deck has 2 lands left, and then we have another Mystic, Crusher, Familiar, and what else? X-Bane Beast, I think. That can't happen. Alright, 5 cards left. Probably not gonna come down to decking. Can adapt again in response to Grotesque Demise. Alright, put our opponent to 1 and then pray. What is this? Summary Judgment. Yep, that should probably be played at sorcery speed. Sky Tether. Opponent is definitely spewing those removal spells. Is X-Bane Beast gonna get across the finish line? Plague White in chump block mode. Man, this game. If our opponent top decks a Grasping Thrall, I'm gonna be sad. They would mill first, exactly by 1 turn. Grudian, alright, so it's trade, and we've got a Frilled Mystic. We can end of turn flash in the Mystic, or we can keep it as a counterspell. We've got Crusher left and Familiar left, so 2 action cards. I don't think there's a great reason to attack, because we can shoot down Grudian as well with the Crusher for what it's worth. Yeah, they have to block, but we can block with the Terramander 2 on the Grudian, so there's no real reason to attack with the Beast. Ideally, they cast a spell here, we Mystic it, and then it's game over. If they don't do anything, things get tricky, since then we probably want to wait. Because if we flash in a Mystic, and our opponent picked up a removal spell, then we're back to even Stevens. Whereas we know we're drawing action. And this forces the opponent to make a move. And our opponent's also just dying next turn to decking. So we don't want to counter anything that doesn't kill us, so this I think is fine. They're dead next turn anyway. So we should just wait and pass a turn. Even though we could have maybe won with damage, but it's just, there's no reason to do it here. Crusher. And the funny thing is, we could still use the Crusher on our upkeep before we take our draw step to burn out our opponent. So even if it didn't come to decking, we could have won this way as well and still have Mystic protection up. And our opponent scoops him up. Wow. They definitely spewed some removal spells near the end there. Grotesque Demise or Terramander when we can adapt in response. Summary Judgment at instant speed instead of at sorcery speed. So who knows what would have happened had they saved those, but we got there. Alright, well, that was quite a game. Sure. No blue mana, but we can play some boars in the meantime. And we've got the Reclamation early this time. Alright, so let's main phase the Creeper here and get in with the boar. And I'll trade for the Creeper if they want to. Like, the Creeper is definitely going to be better later, but since we're missing blue mana, I just don't want to fall too far behind. Creeper could trade for an Arynx, potentially, that our opponent plays on 4. So that's another reason to just keep it, but I think I still trade. Like, we could wait until we can double block with our 2 boars. Alright, opponent's got a Colossus anyway. Yep, it's too bad. Alright, now we'll try and double block with the boars. A Vandal. Alright, I guess we should trade. There's our blue mana. Don't have double blue yet for Mystic, but in due time. Yeah, our opponent discarded Crusher, so they're looking for lands. Yep, that'll resolve. And we'll take the trade. Let them loot first. Discards Axebane Beast. Let's see what we can growth spiral into here before deciding. Put that in play. And we're fine with the trade, I think. Alright. Sadly can't do both, despite untapping our lands. But this is where having a Mystic would be great. Can still Admonition if we have to, although we would prefer not to. Do it at instant speed to get that card. Opponents still struggling to hit their land drops. Clamor Shaman. Yeah, I think we'll just take it. And then we can bounce in our turn and maybe find another blocker. Just take 4 for now. If we bounce the Shaman, they replay it, give it haste. It's not really a solution. Kind of just want to find another blocker here. So then we should probably bounce the Goblin. Because if they want to replay and give it haste, they're hitting us for 1 less. And then since we can block, we should probably just attack. Yeah, Shaman makes his Biomancy a little awkward, since we have to wait until after they attack, but then they can remove a blocker. And if we bounce it before attackers, then they know it's incoming. Runner, sure. Familiar, so now we can double block the Shaman. Alright, we'll need to draw some action here. If we draw lands, we're probably dead. It's gonna be the situation where Screw beats Flood. Finding some card draw off the top would be great. Frilled Mystics would be great. Adapt creatures would be great. Alright, is this a Hasty Goblin or a 3/3 Goblin? It's gonna be a 3/3 Goblin and a hybrid. Alright, so they're just setting up for a big attack next turn. Alright, Skitter Eel was a great draw. So we can play Eel, adapt for 1 mana, and then just pass a turn. And then we can still adapt an additional time in the opponent's turn. And build up a huge Skitter Eel. But we want the Familiar still as a potential blocker. Wrecker. Sure. So gotta figure out if... Alright, they're not playing it as a Hasty Wrecker, so... I don't think we have to bounce anything. Alright, just double checking. Alright, land's not great. Block, block. Take 5, 6, so we would go to 1. Although one of the blocks is not particularly great. But we can also just block the Shaman and then bounce and pump, which would make the block better. So I think we let them attack. Keep land in hand for our draw 4 discard 2. Since we really want to get rid of this Clamor Shaman if we can. If our opponent just keeps playing out creatures and we draw some more lands, we're just dead. Ouch. Yeah, that'll do it. Hasty Beastmaster, how does that change the math? Shaman prevents Eel from blocking, Beastmaster pumps the Wrecker, we can bounce the Wrecker, pump Familiar. I don't think we're winning by bouncing the Shaman right now. So we'll hope something works out here and we get to make some profitable trades. Interesting, our opponent pumps a Shaman. Would make more sense to pump the Wrecker here. So this can block. I guess against a bounce spell this makes sense since they're diversifying their damage more. And now we can bounce the Wrecker to prevent 5. Yeah, I guess that's a good play against a bounce spell. Block, block, bounce. Take 7 exactly. So we should be dead. It's too bad. Had they pumped the Wrecker, then we could have survived by bouncing the Wrecker. But yeah, we're gonna have a hard time winning that game. The jury's still out on whether or not Reclamation is worth it in this deck. On paper it looks decent since we've got a ton of instant speed stuff to do. This hand's not great, but not quite a mulligan. Right, another Simic deck. We do have Eel plus Crusher as a nice combo. Brush Strider. It's actually pretty decent here. It's gonna get in at least 6 damage. Do we want to bounce it? I don't think so. We can set up bounce plus pump on the Skitter Eel at some point, which could come in handy. They've got their own eel. Alright, now things are getting a little dicey. If our opponent has Titanic Brawl, then we're pretty much dead. If they don't, and just attack us for 6, next turn we have a decent turn maybe. Code of Constraint is also pretty bad. Alright, that's a 4/4 Ram. It's not bad. And then we can keep a Titanic Brawl and Biomancy. Seems worth it over trying to play a 4/4 Crusher that doesn't block the eel all that well. So Ram to the rescue. We could of course Titanic Brawl right now, but the instant speed could pay off if our opponent tries and adapt Skitter Eel. Alright, opponent's adapting, so now we have to decide what to do. Yeah, our opponent can adapt a second time since they've got 6 mana. So yeah, we should just bounce with the Biomancy here. Otherwise they adapt in response to the Brawl, and that would be bad. So bounce, +1/+1. +1/+1, bounce. Hope they don't have a Quench. Alright. So this was just purely a tempo play. Didn't really gain a card out of it, but pretty good tempo play nonetheless. So now we get to attack with both. Opponent probably takes it, and then we get to play Crusher, which is quite strong with Eel in play. Alternatively, we could adapt and Brawl as well, but I think we want to save that for next turn. Of course, if they do block, things get tricky. I should have played my land here, so we had the option of adapting twice if we had to, but we can still Brawl. Alright, they do have a Duelist. Fair enough. So they might try and take down the Gatebreaker Ram by double blocking it. That's fine. So we can just Titanic Brawl with the Skitter Eel now, if they try and double block Ram, and then the Brush Strider still dies. Yeah, we want to adapt and then Brawl since we can't do anything else with our mana this turn anyway. And the Ram eats the Brush Strider. They both had 2 toughness. We could have also fought the Brush Strider with Eel instead of the Duelists, but it didn't matter since they both had 2 toughness anyway for the trample from the Ram. Alright. Play land, say go. So now we're firmly ahead on board, and we've got a leverage disadvantage since their opponent's got more cards in hand. Replay Skitter Eel. Gate's not bad. So let's get in there. And then this Crusher is looking mighty fine. Can just start tossing counters at our opponent, Wrecking Beasts. As a 7/7, it's pretty big. We can main phase a Prying Eyes, which would leave us 2 mana at the very most, which is enough to play a Territorial Boar, Familiar, Growth Barrel. So there is some value to main phasing the Prying Eyes, but of course that also shows to the opponent that we're mostly tapped out. Only included 1 Titanic Brawl, so we don't have a second one in our deck. We could attack with the Ram. If they block with the Beast, we can shoot it down by tossing a counter from the Eel. I guess it could be okay. Trade a Ram for a 7/7 Beast seems okay. Since the Ram's not going to get much bigger. And then we'll Prying Eyes in the opponent's turn. Not sure if we're supposed to play out a land, since we're pretty likely to draw a land in 4 cards. But if we don't, then we want to just discard the 2 lands here. Not a Skitter Eel, that's fine. I guess, yeah, if we drew into Essence Capture, we wanted to play the land for sure. But I guess we didn't, so we'll have to let that resolve. And hope this resolves. Alright, didn't get punished. Thought Collapse as a backup is great to have. So we could Savage Smash one of the Eels. Even if they adapt, it would die. And then we can still activate the Crusher. That seems like a good place to start. So let's just kill an Eel here. So that happens. And we can use it at instant speed. So I think we just pass a turn here. And then end of turn we can chuck a counter at our opponent for 2 damage. And adapt once again with the Eel while still having Thought Collapse up. And Gatebreaker Ram would be a 4/4. Might be worthy of a counterspell. If our opponent has a Frilled Mystic here, we're in trouble. Yeah, if they have a Mystic, this is bad, but I think we counter it. Alright, no Mystic at least. A Wayfinder's fine. So they can't attack us with the Skitter Eel, otherwise they're dead on the way back, unless they've got more interaction. Let's just deal 2 to this. And then we can play Beasts, adapt Eel. No real reason to attack here, since we've got this inevitability from the Eel and the Crusher. Opponent kept the gate on top, which probably implies they've got an Archway incoming here. Otherwise they probably wouldn't keep the gate on top. So how are we going to deal with that? Our opponent's going to gain 6 and have a 3/4 in play. Still don't think we want to trade Eels. Plays a gate. Is this the Angel? Alright, I guess Hydroid Crisis. Yeah, that's a problem. Not sure why they kept the gate on top. But Crisis, good in limited as well. And that's a 2-turn clock. Although Terramander's not bad. Doesn't quite block the Crisis, but if they attack, we could have lethal on the way back. Although, of course, our opponent did draw 3 cards. I think we just say go. And hope they didn't draw anything relevant, and Crusher can burn them out. Yeah, turns out Krasis was better than Angel. Opponent sacks Lock at main phase, I guess that's promising. Alright, no attacks. Let's activate the Crusher. Incongruity the Crusher in response. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Adapts. So how much are we attacking with here? If our opponent has nothing, they would be dead. We get punished by Fairy Duelists, Slimebind, Summary Judgment. They're just... wow, opponent just concedes. I'm not sure if I would have gone for it here, but I guess I didn't have it. And that's why you shouldn't concede if you're on the other side. Well, that was definitely a sweat. On the draw, I think we can keep this. We've got both our colors, Growth Spiral into Reclamations, like we're playing constructed here. This is our Sinister Sabotage, and this is our Expansion Explosion. Plague White's annoying. We do get to keep up Thought Collapse at least. Alright. So we're seeing the synergy between counter spells and Growth Spiral. What about the Grudian? Grudian's annoying. Don't have a great way to deal with it other than trying to kill it with Crusher, but that requires a +1 counter, which we don't have at the ready. So I think we counter it. Ooh, wow. That's a pretty good one to mill. Alright, let's get this Reclamation out there. Can Growth Spiral put the gate into play. Have access to our 5 drops next turn. I guess we should draw in case we find an Essence Capture. Alright, time for Mammoth Spider. Block the Spirit, and we still have Titanic Brawl up. Alright, this would be a good time for Frilled Mystic. Ooh, Lumbering Battlement. It's gonna be hard to beat. What if we kill the Plague White in response, and our opponent has to decide whether or not they want to exile the Spirit of the Spires, because they're exiling one creature for sure, otherwise the Spider just blocks it. Yeah, we might want to Titanic Brawl the Plague White here, so they at least have to get rid of the Spirit if they want to make this big. And on 7 we can try and double block it. So Spirit says bye-bye. 6/6 Gatebreaker Rams, not bad here. So yeah, I think the plan is to double block the battlement, hope our opponent doesn't have any instant speed shenanigans. And then next turn we can play the Ram. Alternatively, we can play the Ram and double block. But the Ram is probably going to be better than Crusher for us. Any tricks that punish the Crusher that don't punish the Ram, because Ram's one bigger. There's not too many +1/+1 effects floating around. So I think we'll play the Crusher. Of course, we would feel more comfortable making this double block with counterspell backup. But at 14 we can't keep taking 6, so we might have to pull the trigger here. And hope they don't have any grotesque demises or bound spells. or Fairy Duelists. We could take 6, take 1 draw step, hope we draw a counterspell in that 1 draw step. So if they do have a trick here, we can maybe counter it. But I think they kind of force us into a corner. Final payments, yep. Alright, Skitter Eel can play both here. And then still adapt the eel. Angel's a good one. No attacks. It's not bad. So we're just gonna fight the angel here. No attacks. Alright, so we got the flyer off our back for now. Another Spirit of the Spires. Ooh, Frilled Mystic, that's a good one. Alright, so they're clocking us for 2 every turn. Got some time to draw out. Got to counter every flyer they play, pretty much. Yep. Essence Capture. We can hit them for 13. They get to eat the Gatebreaker ramp, presumably. Opponent's down to 8. And then we would have lethal if they attack with Spirit and don't have anything. So we win if our opponent's next play is just to play a creature, essentially. Because we would get in for 13 now, down to 8, lose a creature. And then if they stop attacking with the Spirit of the Spires, that's fine. And if they don't, then block, take 8. Yeah, I think this is a good window to get in an attack. And then hope that their next play is just play creature, an expensive one at that. They do get an attack in with the battlements. And the Spirit attacked as well. I think we did it. Wow. Still that one. And there we go. I got 2 diamonds. Sweet. Yeah, these games are definitely pretty intense. On to the next one. What about this one? Sure. It's not great, but we've got a turn to Essence Capture. And I think we do lead with Island instead of Gates. Yeah, that's not happening. Our Homunculus is pretty good, but we can Savage Smash it. Opponent's got 4 mana up. Can't actually Savage Smash since we don't have both green and red. Titanic Brawl doesn't work, so I guess we'll just attack. If they have a Fairy Duelist, we can Brawl with the Boar. So let's go full control for a second. Hope they don't have their own pump spell. Uh-oh. Ouch. Well, this was a disaster. Yeah, we're probably dead now. We do have a Crusher plus Savage Smash, but that was a blowout. I wouldn't quite call it a 4-for-1. More of a 3-for-1. Get to play Crusher. Opponent gets to adapt. How much damage we taking? So yeah, we're just dead here. Alright. Well, that was a brutal game. At least it was over quickly. And yeah, I think this is a keep. Play Island in case of Essence Capture. Savants. Don't really want to trade for Savants. Reason not to trade is that we have Crusher plus Eel potentially coming up, so we can get rid of the Savant that way. Yeah, I guess we'll stay back for now. And then just play Island, say go. Represents a counter spell, but then we can just Growth Spiral end of turn instead. Familiar's not bad, although opponent had a pause there, so they probably have a counterspell up. And Eel is kind of important for the Crusher. And they're probably going to counter the Familiar unless it's a Quench. So I think we play Familiar. I would rather lose a Familiar than the Skitter Eel, and if it happens to be a Quench, then we play around it. But it's probably a Thought Collapse. Alright, Essence Capture, sure. It's also bad, but at least the creature still trades, so now we just want to stay back and trade for the Savant if they attack. Griffin. So we're okay with the land here. Think I still trade. Let's get the Spider in play. So red mana gets us pretty far. Sphinx still gets blocked by our Spider. Alright. If our opponent does have an enchantment-based removal spell like Law Mage's Binding, we could always Admonition the Spider, although that's gonna still end up in a lot of damage since it takes 2 turns to bounce the Spider and replay it. So we would be taking 14 damage at least in the meantime. Not sure what this means. They are attacking with the Sphinx, but not the Griffin. +2/+2, they would still attack with the Griffin. I guess Sentinel's Mark makes sense, since that's +1/+2. So yeah, a Sentinel's Mark is the only explanation. I guess we'll take it, since we have Admonition at instant speed next turn. And we can punish them for going for the Sentinel's Mark. Skyguard. Well, now that no longer works. But I think we still pass the turn here. I've got a Frilled Mystic now as well. We could also set up Admonition plus Mystic if we have enough mana, or if we do it at instant speed. Got some options now. Could also bounce the Skyguard and then eat the Sphinx if they don't respect it. Alright, so what's likely to happen if we block? They Sentinel's Mark, we bounce, and we would rather bounce the Skyguard so we can counter it on the way back. Although blocking here, this is interesting. I guess they're not forced to use a Sentinel's Mark anymore. They can just hit us for 4. That's the problem now. So we prevent 1 more damage by blocking the Sphinx. And if we block the Skyguard and they Sentinel's Mark, they're not killing the Spider. Whereas if we block the Sphinx and they Sentinel's Mark, then they would be killing the Spider, so they're more incentivized to do it. I guess we do block the Sphinx. And then Admonition plus pay 2 can still bounce it. But then they can also replay it unless the auto-tapper messes with them. Tricky spot. Take 4. And then adapt end of turn. Alright, we were kind of hoping for a land here so we could bounce plus Mystic. Now, I guess the eel's just attacking by itself. So we're in this weird race where we're both dealing 4 damage a turn. And there's a knowledge of a potential Sentinel's Mark. I think we make the same block. Since it's a Skyguard, we actually want to bounce and counter and not the Sphinx. Since if we block the Sphinx, they can still Sentinel's Mark to kill our Spider. We bounce, but then they also get to replay the Sphinx, and we're kind of in the same spot without having countered any of them. So we really need an untap land here. But we might have to Frilled Mystic if they play something impactful. Savant is fine. Opponent's also getting to the point where they can Sentinel's Mark and play the Skyguard in the same turn. So if we bounce the Skyguard in the opponent's turn, they might be able to replay it. If we bounce the Sphinx, we need to pay the Sphinx tax, and then we can't Mystic. So this game's pretty interesting. Alright, there's a land, so that opens up a whole lot of options. Opponent attacks with, let's say they attack with the Sphinx and the Skyguard. Then Spider goes in front of Sphinx. Opponent goes for the Sentinel's Mark, or they don't. If they do, then we can Frilled Mystic to counter it, and then Eraser's Admonition to bounce the Skyguard. And then we get to eat the Sphinx for free and have bounced the Skyguard. So that's an okay outcome. If we block the Skyguard, what happens? Opponent might be attacking with all the flyers to try and go for lethal with the Sentinel's Mark. Either way, I don't think we can attack with the eel here, since the damage from the Savant is quite relevant. And we have to take our time. The only alternative is bouncing main phase. I think we're blocking the Sphinx. Yeah, opponent attacks with everyone since they think they can go for lethal. Alright, opponent lets damage happen. So we want to bounce the Skyguard here. And then if they go for the Sentinel's Mark, we can Mystic it. And hope they don't have a counterspell of their own. Alright, so they're kind of forced to play the Mark here. And hope they don't have a counterspell. Looks like they do. Oh well, we tried. Yeah, this wasn't gonna work if they had their own counterspell, of course. But this was a line that we were trying to set up. And a Thought Collapse is not gonna help. Alright, so we're just dead to the flyers now. Yeah, it was a pretty difficult spot for us since we knew they had a Sentinel's Mark, but there was no easy way to beat it. Alright, GG's. So overall, got some very interesting games in. Ended the draft at 3-3, so not the best result, but the deck wasn't all that amazing, so 3-3 is still respectable at this rank. And we did get to Diamond at least, which is pretty nice. So let's crack some packs. Got 20 gems out of it. And yeah, I think that's gonna do it for today's draft. But for now, I wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. And as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.